found interesting, we looked at Fortune 50 companies who are, where are these people working? And interesting enough that kids in the 20 to 40% admissions band worked more often in Fortune 50 companies than kids in the top 20%. Now, some of that is there's more of them, right? You're more likely to work because they're the the senior classes or the classes at these institutions, at these other institutions are just so much bigger. You're more likely to work with somebody from Ohio State than you are from Harvard University anyway. But what we found is that you can get jobs at these other places. One final data point from that chapter, which is really one of my favorite chapters in the book, is that there's a big study of CEOs. Frank Bruni made reference to this in his book, but this is an updated study of CEOs. Three of the top Fortune 50 company or Fortune 500 companies, 300 different colleges represented among those Fortune 500 CEOs. And by the way, some colleges like Ohio University, not Ohio State University, has more CEOs than Harvard University, right? So, like, again, there's all of these perceptions we have. Oh my God, you're never going to get a job if you go to fill in the blank, no name college or college that has a high acceptance rate. That's not true.
Fantastic. In the book, you shared a number of super powerful arguments for students casting their application net wider, digging deeper, finding more colleges. And we're going to talk about some of the ways you suggested doing that. One of the most valuable things about this book is you actually give parents a roadmap on how to do some of these things. One of the compelling reasons was easy to understand: big fish, small pond. It helps with opportunities, it helps with confidence. But the second was that students were more, and this really surprised me, students were more likely to stay in a challenging major in a somewhat less competitive college than they were in a more competitive college. So they were more likely to finish that engineering or that, some sort of sciences degree that may have been very, very challenging if they were at a slightly less challenging college. So can you touch on those
It
two?
kind of it runs counterintuitive to what we think,
Yes.
right? We often think, oh, we want our kids with the smartest kids, right? And what ends up happening at these places, right? If all these big fish, because think about it, right? Every year, whether you're at Duke or Harvard or MIT, just think about you're going to be with the smartest kids from not only US but around the world. And what ends up happening at those places is that some people kind of rise to the challenge, and it's a very big challenge, and they're able to kind of swim with those big fish. Others kind of really fall by the wayside. But then it's a much more competitive pond, if we keep this analogy going, right? And some people become kind of shark-like in some ways. And it's much more competitive as a result. And we have data from a number of studies, particularly in STEM fields, by the way, that show that for every higher SAT score at some of these places, your chances of actually staying in those STEM majors actually declines. In other words, that the chances of you staying at a STEM major at Stanford are less than you staying in a STEM major at Texas A&M. And that's an example I use in the book because I met a mother whose son graduated from Houston High School, ends up at Stanford in engineering, and ends up not only dropping out of the major, but eventually transferring out of Stanford. And she was really surprised because his backup choice was Texas A&M. And I said, well, you probably would have actually he would have actually had a better chance of staying at Texas A&M. And why is that? Because first of all, the faculty are going to be much more focused on those top students. So if you're struggling, the faculty are in this student, this mother told me that, her son couldn't get really good help. The TAs were basically saying, you know what, you can't, if you can't keep up, it's kind of a sink or swim mentality. Where at many of these other colleges that are listed in the book, which by the way are still great schools, there is more support services, right? There's more tutoring, and there's more, the faculty want to spend time with you. And we see the difference over and over again, Lisa. This comes up in the book often about how faculty, especially at these super selective colleges, especially at research universities, perceive undergraduates as just something they have to do. Not all faculty, but just
Yep.
oh, I have to teach undergraduates in order to do my research or in order to have my graduate students. Where at many other colleges that are not at the top of the rankings, They actually have professors who really want to be there for undergraduates, who want to teach, who want to spend time with them. And what's shocking to me, Lisa, and then I'll end the story here, is I was just speaking to a fairly selective liberal arts college, their board, and they couldn't believe that parents don't look kind of under the hood at both the curriculum, but also at the faculty. Like, who is going to be teaching your kids? So often, we've all been on these college tours. They'll speed through an academic building. You might go into a lobby of an academic building. You'll rarely go, if ever, into a class. You'll never really get to meet that many faculty members. Yet, in essence, that's what you're paying for, right? That to me is the kind of secret sauce of a lot of colleges are the faculty members, and we don't pay enough attention to them.